Today, I want to take you into a world where escape is not an option, where the walls do more than just confine. They completely erase hope. A place so secure, so impenetrable, that even the most dangerous minds in history are left powerless. I am talking about Black Dolphin Prison, one of the most secure and isolated jails on Earth. Located near the Russian-Kazakhstan border, this prison is not just a facility. It is a fortress of absolute control. The moment a prisoner enters, they become part of a system designed to ensure that they never escape, never resist, and never hope for freedom again. Inside these walls, some of the world's most violent criminals, murderers, terrorists, and serial offenders, live under conditions so strict that even blinking out of routine could mean severe punishment. The inmates are kept in total isolation, housed in tiny cells with 4 layers of security between them and the outside world. Even during transfers, they are blindfolded, forced to walk in a bent-over position with guards gripping them tightly, ensuring that they never learn the layout of the prison. The daily routine here is relentless. Prisoners live under 24-hour surveillance, with guard monitoring every breath they take. They are fed soup and bread, given a mere 4-square-meter cell, and forced to exercise under strict supervision. There is no parole, no leniency, only absolute submission to the system. The name Black Dolphin comes from a statue built by the inmates themselves. But make no mistake, this prison is no symbol of hope or creativity. It is a final destination. Once you enter, you never leave, except in a body bag. This prison represents the extreme end of security and punishment. It raises questions about justice, rehabilitation, and human rights. Is such absolute control necessary? Does it prevent crime? Or does it merely ensure that society never has to confront the people who commit the worst of atrocities? Regardless of the answers, one fact remains unchanged. Black Dolphin Prison stands as one of the most fortified, isolated, and merciless prisons on Earth, a place where time does not exist, only survival within its iron grip. Imagine a place where the very idea of escape is nothing more than a distant dream, where every second of every day is monitored, controlled, and stripped of any personal freedom. This is not a scene from a dystopian novel. It is reality within the walls of Black Dolphin Prison. Known as one of the most secure and isolated prisons in the world, Black Dolphin is a fortress designed to house the most dangerous criminals. It is a place where mercy does not exist, where prisoners are locked away from the world with no hope of return. The mere mention of its name strikes fear into those who know its reputation. The Russian government does not see this facility as just another prison. It is a symbol of absolute security and punishment. Located near the border between Russia and Kazakhstan, Black Dolphin is an establishment that ensures that those who enter its gates never see the outside world again. The inmates here are not just criminals. They are individuals deemed too dangerous for society to ever accept back. These are serial killers, terrorists, cannibals, and the worst offenders imaginable. The name Black Dolphin itself is a strange and deceptive contrast to the true nature of this facility. It comes from a statue crafted by the prisoners themselves, a simple black dolphin figure positioned outside the prison. However, there is nothing peaceful or artistic about this place. Black Dolphin is a labyrinth of high-security barriers, armed guards, and a regime so strict that it breaks even the strongest of wills. To enter Black Dolphin as a prisoner is to surrender all sense of autonomy. The facility is built on principles of complete control, ensuring that every individual within its walls is reduced to nothing more than a number, a body moving through a meticulously calculated system. There are no names, no identities, only survival under the most extreme conditions. Black Dolphin Prison is not just a correctional institution. It is a sentence unto itself. Prisoners are held under the tightest security possible, subjected to an existence where they are not allowed to sit or rest during daylight hours. Even when moved from one part of the prison to another, they are blindfolded, shackled, and forced to walk in a bent-over position, preventing them from memorizing the layout of the facility. This level of security is not just about preventing escape. It is about eliminating even the thought of escape. The psychological impact of Black Dolphin is just as severe as the physical restrictions. Inmates live in perpetual isolation, unable to speak to one another or interact in any meaningful way. Their world is confined to a small, 4-square-meter cell, where every movement is monitored, every second accounted for. The presence of 24-hour surveillance ensures that no prisoner is ever out of sight. There is no privacy, no comfort, only the relentless certainty of confinement. At Black Dolphin, the routine is strict and unforgiving. Prisoners are given meager rations, typically a diet consisting of soup and bread, just enough to keep them alive, but never enough to provide comfort. They are allowed only a few moments of physical exercise each day, always under strict supervision. Their days are structured in such a way that their bodies remain active, yet their spirits remain crushed. The guards at Black Dolphin are not merely enforcers of the law. They are the embodiment of the prison's authority. Trained to maintain absolute control, they follow procedures that ensure no inmate ever has the opportunity to resist. There is no room for error, no second chances. While many prisons around the world claim to be secure, Black Dolphin operates on an entirely different level. It is not just a place of confinement. It is a facility that strips away any hope, any possibility of a future beyond its walls. It is the end of the road for those deemed beyond redemption. Would you like me to continue expanding, or does this length work for you? Location of Black Dolphin Prison. Black Dolphin Prison is strategically located in one of the most remote and inhospitable regions of Russia, near the country's southern border with Kazakhstan. This prison is not just designed to be impenetrable from the inside. It is also positioned in a way that makes external intervention or escape nearly impossible. The facility sits in the Orenburg region, a vast and largely desolate landscape where the harsh Russian climate becomes yet another barrier keeping prisoners locked away from the rest of the world. The location of Black Dolphin is not a coincidence. Russia has a long history of using isolation as a method of control, dating back to the days of the Siberian gulags. These remote prisons were designed not only to punish, but to ensure that escape was a near impossible feat due to the sheer distances, extreme weather conditions, and lack of human settlements in the surrounding areas. Black Dolphin follows this same philosophy. Even if an inmate were to somehow break free from the facility, a scenario that has never happened, they would be met with a cruel reality. Endless miles of emptiness, with no food, no shelter, and no allies. The chances of survival outside the prison walls are just as grim as the conditions within them. The town closest to Black Dolphin is Soliletsk, a small and relatively unknown settlement that exists in the shadow of this notorious prison. Unlike prisons located in urban areas where escapees might blend into the population, Black Dolphin's placement ensures that no one can disappear into a crowd. The region's sparse population and heightened security presence make any unauthorized movement immediately noticeable. The prison itself is part of a larger penal colony system controlled by the Russian Federal Penitentiary Service. While Russia has many high-security facilities, Black Dolphin is one of the most feared, not only because of its security measures, but also because of its complete isolation. There are no visits, no contact with the outside world. Once inside, an inmate is entirely cut off from life beyond the prison walls. The climate of the region adds an extra layer of hardship for both prisoners and staff. Winters in Orenburg can be brutally cold, with temperatures dropping well below freezing. The air becomes sharp, the wind relentless, and the snow-covered landscape makes the entire environment feel unforgiving. Summers, on the other hand, bring scorching heat, making life inside the already harsh prison even more unbearable. These extreme weather conditions further emphasize the inescapability of Black Dolphin. Any attempt to flee would mean facing not only armed guards, but also nature itself as a relentless adversary. Additionally, the prison's location serves a psychological purpose. Being placed in such an isolated region reinforces the idea that there is no way out, no second chance, and no hope for freedom. For prisoners, the reality of their confinement is amplified by the knowledge that they are not just locked away from society. They are buried within a fortress surrounded by endless miles of nothingness. Would you like me to continue expanding or adjust anything prisoner profile? Who is sent to Black Dolphin? Black Dolphin Prison is not a facility for ordinary criminals. It is a place reserved for the absolute worst offenders, the most violent, ruthless, and dangerous individuals in Russia. This is not a prison for petty thieves, fraudsters, or even those guilty of lesser violent crimes. Black Dolphin is the final destination for murderers, serial killers, rapists, terrorists, cannibals, and those who have committed crimes so horrifying that they are considered beyond redemption. The prison holds approximately 700 inmates, a relatively small number compared to other high-security prisons. However, what makes this number staggering is the nature of the crimes these individuals have committed. These are not people who have made a single mistake or who might one day be rehabilitated. These are men who have taken multiple lives, who have tortured, who have shown no remorse for their actions. Collectively, the inmates of Black Dolphin have been responsible for the deaths of over 3,500 people. That is an average of 5 murders per prisoner. Some have killed dozens. Some have committed crimes so shocking that they have become infamous even beyond Russia's borders. Among the prisoners are serial killers who stalked and murdered their victims for years before finally being caught. There are terrorists who have orchestrated deadly attacks, taking the lives of innocent civilians in acts of extreme violence. There are cannibals who not only killed, but also consumed their victims. Some inmates were once powerful figures in the criminal underworld, mob bosses, gang leaders, and masterminds behind organized crime rings. But in Black Dolphin, all of them are reduced to the same fate: total isolation, complete submission, an existence where the only certainty is that they will never leave. One of the defining characteristics of Black Dolphin's prisoners is that they are all serving life sentences. Russia has abolished the death penalty, but for the men locked inside this facility, life imprisonment here is as close to a death sentence as it gets. There is no parole, no possibility of reduced sentencing, and no chance of ever re-entering society. Once convicted and sent to Black Dolphin, an inmate's fate is sealed. The only way they will ever leave the prison is in a body bag. The Russian government does not take the decision to send someone to Black Dolphin lightly. Before an inmate is transferred here, they must be classified as a high-risk offender, someone deemed too dangerous to be held in an ordinary maximum security prison. This means that only the most notorious and feared criminals end up within its walls. The selection process is strict because Black Dolphin is not just a prison. It is a final containment facility designed to house individuals who can never be trusted to live among others again. Life in Black Dolphin is designed to break these prisoners both physically and psychologically. Unlike other prisons where inmates might form social groups, develop routines, or even gain small privileges over time, there's no such system here. The men who are sent to Black Dolphin are stripped of any sense of power or control. There is no hierarchy among the inmates. Everyone is treated with the same level of severity. There are no cellmates, no contact with other prisoners, and no means of forming alliances. Each inmate exists in a state of complete and utter isolation. Even within a country known for its tough prison system, Black Dolphin stand apart. Other Russian prisons, such as the Polar Owl and the Arctic Circle, are infamous for their harsh conditions, but none match the level of control and restriction seen in Black Dolphin. Here, prisoners are not simply locked away. They are erased from society, both physically and mentally. Extreme security measures at Black Dolphin Prison. Black Dolphin Prison is designed to be an impenetrable fortress, a place where escape is not just difficult. It is impossible. The security measures in place are some of the strictest in the world, ensuring that the inmates remain under absolute control at all times. From the moment a prisoner enters the facility, their existence is completely dictated by the rigid structure of the prison security system. One of the most striking aspects of Black Dolphin security is the way prisoners are moved within the facility. Unlike most prisons, where inmates may walk freely within designated areas under guard supervision, Black Dolphin enforces a method of movement that eliminates any possibility of resistance or escape. Prisoners are blindfolded and shackled whenever they are transported, even if it is just from their cell to an interrogation room or an exercise area. The blindfolds prevent them from memorizing the layout of the prison, ensuring they never gain even the slightest understanding of their surroundings. Adding to this control, inmates are forced to walk in a bent-over position, with their heads lowered and hands tightly gripped behind them by multiple guards. This position is deliberately designed to prevent any form of sudden attack or resistance. It also reinforces the psychological dominance of the guards over the prisoners, making it clear that they have no power, no authority, and no control over their movements. The prison itself is structured with multiple layers of security. The entire facility is enclosed by high walls, reinforced barriers, and constant surveillance. There are no weak points in the perimeter, no areas where a prisoner could find an opportunity to escape. Every section of the prison is secured by heavy metal doors, multiple locked gates, and checkpoints that require strict authorization. Even if an inmate were to somehow bypass one layer of security, they would immediately encounter another, making escape a logistical impossibility. Each inmate is housed in a tiny 4-square-meter cell with thick steel doors and multiple layers of reinforcement. The cells themselves are designed to be escape-proof, with no windows large enough to crawl through and no weak spots in the walls. The doors are locked with heavy-duty mechanisms, and access to each cell is strictly monitored. Surveillance at Black Dolphin is relentless. Every single cell is equipped with 24-hour video monitoring, meaning that no inmate is ever out of sight. The guards watch their every movement, ensuring that there are no opportunities for plotting, communicating, or engaging in any kind of disruptive behavior. Unlike other prisons, where inmates might find ways to send messages or form alliances, Black Dolphin makes this impossible. There is no chance for inmates to interact, as they are completely isolated from one another at all times. Security extends beyond just the physical structures and surveillance systems. The guards at Black Dolphin are highly trained and operate under strict protocols. Unlike in many prisons, where guards may interact with inmates to some degree, the guards here maintain absolute professionalism and distance. They do not engage in casual conversations, they do not form relationships with prisoners, and they do not display any signs of leniency. Every interaction is conducted with strict discipline, ensuring that no inmate ever feels they have an opportunity to manipulate the system. Even the daily routines of prisoners are designed with security in mind. Inmates are only allowed outside their cells for limited periods, and even then, they are under constant supervision. They are given minimal exercise time, always within enclosed, heavily secured areas where escape is not an option. Meals are provided through small openings in their cell doors, preventing direct contact with guards. There are no communal dining areas, no recreational spaces, and no opportunities for inmates to gather or communicate in any way. Black Dolphin security measures are so extreme that even the most notorious criminals in Russia stand no chance of escaping. The combination of strict movement protocols, relentless surveillance, heavily fortified structures, and highly trained guards creates an environment where prisoners have no control over their own lives. Every detail, from how they move to how they eat to how they sleep, is dictated by the prison's strict security system. Total isolation. Life inside Black Dolphin Prison. Black Dolphin Prison is not just a place of confinement. It is a facility designed to strip inmates of any sense of individuality, hope, or connection to the outside world. Unlike most prisons, where inmates may interact with each other in controlled settings, Black Dolphin enforces a regime of complete and total isolation. The prisoners here do not share cells, they do not communicate with one another, and they live in a state of permanent separation from other human beings. Each inmate is housed in a tiny 4-square-meter cell, which is designed to be both inescapable and psychologically crushing. The walls are thick, the doors reinforced with multiple layers of steel, and there are no windows that offer a view of the outside world. Even when a prisoner is allowed to leave their cell for brief periods of exercise, they are never placed in the presence of another inmate. Every movement is closely monitored by guards, ensuring that no unauthorized contact occurs. One of the most extreme aspects of isolation at Black Dolphin is the total lack of social interaction. In most prisons, even high-security ones, inmates can communicate with each other in some way, whether through cell doors, during meal times, or in supervised yard visits. At Black Dolphin, this is completely prohibited. Prisoners are kept in strict solitude, unable to even hear the voices of other inmates. Their only human contact comes from the guards, who enforce an impersonal, strictly controlled routine. The effects of such isolation are severe. The human mind is not built to withstand long-term solitude without suffering psychological consequences. Inmates at Black Dolphin are deprived of any form of entertainment or stimulation. There are no televisions, no radios, no books, and no writing materials unless strictly approved. This means prisoners have no way to occupy their minds beyond staring at the walls of their cells. The monotony of life in isolation can lead to extreme mental deterioration, causing hallucinations, paranoia, severe depression, and even suicidal thoughts. The prison's strict daily routine further reinforces this sense of complete control. Inmates are awakened at 6 a.m. sharp and are not allowed to rest or sit on their beds during the day. Instead, they must remain standing or engaged in some form of movement within their tiny cells. This is designed to prevent any sense of comfort, making the passage of time feel even more unbearable. The lack of variation in their schedule adds to the psychological strain. Every day is the same, with no change, no progress, and no hope for the future. Mealtimes are another example of how isolation is enforced. Inmates are not taken to a dining hall. Instead, their food is passed through a small opening in their cell doors. The meals themselves are simple and utilitarian, usually a thin soup with bread, designed to provide just enough nutrition to keep them alive, but nothing more. There is no enjoyment in eating. It is simply another part of the mechanical routine that defines life in Black Dolphin. Even exercise, which is typically a relief for prisoners in other facilities, is highly restricted here. Inmates are only allowed outside their cells for short periods, always alone, and always under strict supervision. The exercise yards are small, enclosed spaces that provide no view of the outside world. Prisoners are only allowed to move in controlled, repetitive patterns, ensuring they do not gain any sense of freedom or autonomy. The lack of communication extends beyond the prison walls. Most prisoners in Black Dolphin have little to no contact with the outside world. Visits from family members are extremely rare and, in many cases, entirely prohibited. Letters and phone calls are strictly monitored, and many inmates receive no correspondence at all. Over time, this complete disconnection from society reinforces the idea that they have been entirely erased from existence. Black Dolphin does not allow its prisoners to form relationships, to hope for the future, or to engage in any kind of meaningful interaction. It is a place where they are reduced to numbers, their past lives erased, and their futures non-existent. The isolation here is not just physical. It is psychological, emotional, and existential. Harsh living conditions, the reality of survival in Black Dolphin. Life inside Black Dolphin Prison is not just about confinement. It is about complete and relentless deprivation. Every aspect of existence within its walls is designed to strip inmates of any comfort, autonomy, or sense of humanity. Unlike other prisons where inmates may have some privileges, Black Dolphin operates under a system that ensures prisoners live in a constant state of hardship, controlled by strict rules and an unforgiving routine. The cells, a life of confinement. Each prisoner is housed in a tiny, 4-square-meter cell, which is barely large enough to stretch out in. The walls are thick, the doors reinforced, and every cell is under constant video surveillance. There are no personal items, no decorations, and no sense of individuality. Prisoners are not allowed to modify their living space in any way, and their cells remain cold, sterile, and featureless. The metal beds are bolted to the walls, with only a thin mattress and a small pillow provided. Prisoners are not permitted to lie down or rest during the day. They must either stand or move within their small space, reinforcing the sense that there is no respite, no moment of peace. Even at night, sleep is heavily regulated. Guards frequently check on inmates, ensuring they are following all rules. There is no possibility of hiding anything, no secret movements. Every breath, every action is observed. The cells have no windows that provide a view of the outside world. The only light comes from artificial sources, which remain dim and monotonous, further disorienting inmates and blurring the passage of time. Days and nights blend into one endless cycle, where the outside world becomes a distant, unreachable concept. Food and nutrition, just enough to survive. The meals at Black Dolphin are designed to keep inmates alive, nothing more. There are no luxuries, no variety, and certainly no enjoyment. A typical meal consists of thin soup, bread, and occasionally porridge. There is no meat, no fresh fruit, and no desserts. Food is provided through a small slot in the cell door, preventing any physical interaction between guards and prisoners. Prisoners must eat quickly and in silence. There is no dining hall, no communal eating. Every meal is a solitary experience. The purpose of food here is purely functional. It provides just enough energy to keep prisoners physically capable, but never enough to provide comfort or pleasure. Over time, the lack of proper nutrition takes its toll, leading to weight loss, muscle deterioration, and long-term health issues. Water is strictly controlled, and showers are limited. Inmates are allowed to wash under supervision, but only at designated times and for a short duration. Hygiene products are basic, and medical care is provided only when absolutely necessary. There is no special treatment, no prioritization of inmate well-being. Exercise and movement, a rigid, controlled routine. Prisoners at Black Dolphin are given a small amount of time for exercise each day, but even this is a highly controlled process. When an inmate is taken out of their cell, they are blindfolded, shackled, and forced into a bent-over position with guards holding them. This prevents them from memorizing the layout of the prison and reinforces their powerlessness. Exercise takes place in a small, enclosed yard, often just another concrete cell with an open roof. There are no weights, no running tracks, and no physical activities beyond basic movement. Inmates are expected to perform repetitive exercises such as walking in circles, stretching, or light calisthenics. The purpose of this is not to maintain fitness, but to ensure that prisoners remain physically capable of enduring their sentences without suffering complete bodily collapse. Unlike in other prisons where exercise can be a moment of relief or social interaction, at Black Dolphin, it is just another part of the monotonous and controlled routine. There is no freedom of movement, no choice in how to spend time. Everything is dictated by the prison's strict regulations. Mental and psychological strain. Perhaps the most brutal aspect of the living conditions in Black Dolphin is the psychological toll it takes on inmates. The extreme isolation, lack of mental stimulation, and rigid control over every aspect of life create an environment that breaks prisoners down over time. There are no televisions, no radios, no books unless specifically approved. There's no creative outlet, no way to distract oneself from the crushing reality of confinement. Inmates do not have access to education, work programs, or rehabilitation efforts. Unlike some high-security prisons that offer inmates a chance to learn or improve themselves, Black Dolphin offers nothing. The prison does not aim to reform or rehabilitate. It exists solely to contain. Communication with the outside world is minimal. Many inmates receive no letters, no visits, and no phone calls. They are cut off from family and friends, with no way to know what is happening beyond the prison walls. Over time, this erasure from society reinforces the idea that they no longer exist beyond their cell. Depression, anxiety, and hallucinations are common among inmates. Some lose track of time completely, unable to distinguish one day from the next. Others suffer from paranoia, convinced that every moment is being watched, because it is. The constant surveillance ensures that no inmate ever has a moment of true privacy or autonomy. No hope, no escape. Unlike in some prisons, where inmates can look forward to parole hearings, reduced sentences, or reintegration programs, Black Dolphin offers no such possibilities. Every prisoner inside these walls is serving a life sentence. There is no hope of release, no chance of ever stepping foot outside the prison again. This knowledge, the certainty that they will die within these walls, adds another layer of psychological torment. The only way out of Black Dolphin is in a body bag. For many, this realization leads to deep despair, and some prisoners mentally shut down, unable to process the full weight of their reality. The brutal daily routine, a life without freedom. Life inside Black Dolphin Prison follows an unyielding, militarized schedule designed to strip inmates of any sense of personal autonomy. There is no deviation, no flexibility, and no sense of personal choice. Every second of every day is controlled by the prison authorities, ensuring that prisoners remain in a perpetual state of submission. The rigid daily routine is not just about discipline. It is a psychological tool meant to break prisoners down over time, reducing them to mere shadows of their former selves. Wake-up call, the beginning of another empty day. Every morning at exactly 6 a.m., prisoners are woken up in the same manner. No alarms, no spoken words, just the mechanical opening of cell doors for routine inspections. The prisoners must immediately stand at attention, facing the wall, hands at their sides. There is no hesitation allowed. The guards enter without acknowledgement, conducting inspections with robotic precision, ensuring that nothing is out of place and that the prisoner is fully alert. Unlike in other prisons, where inmates might be allowed a slow start to their day, at Black Dolphin, there is no room for such luxury. The bed is not a place for comfort. It is only for sleep, and only at night. Once the day begins, prisoners are not permitted to sit or rest on their beds until nightfall. This strict rule forces inmates to remain on their feet or engage in controlled, limited movements within their tiny cells, ensuring they never experience a moment of physical ease. Morning inspection and cell search. The first activity of the day is a full inspection. Guards check every corner of the cell, searching for contraband, even though the chances of finding any are almost non-existent. Everything an inmate owns is issued by the prison, and personal possessions are strictly controlled. The search is more about control and routine than actual security risks. The psychological impact of knowing that one cell is never truly their own reinforces the feeling of total imprisonment. Prisoners must remain silent and completely still during inspections. Any unnecessary movement or even accidental eye contact with a guard can be considered an infraction. This level of control ensures that inmates understand their place within the prison hierarchy. They're not just prisoners, they're subjects of an unbreakable system. Meals, nutrition without enjoyment. Breakfast is delivered shortly after the morning inspection. There is no dining hall, no communal eating, and no variety. A standard meal consists of thin soup, a small piece of bread, and occasionally porridge. There is no seasoning, no variety, and no choice, just basic sustenance designed to keep inmates alive, but never satisfied. The food is passed through a small opening in the cell door, ensuring that there is no physical interaction between guards and prisoners. Meals must be eaten quickly, and there is no talking. There is no silverware, just the most basic of utensils, and sometimes food must be eaten by hand. If a prisoner does not finish their meal in time, it is taken away, reinforcing the idea that even nourishment is a privilege rather than a right. Prisoners receive only 3 meals per day, with no snacks, no special dietary accommodations, and no adjustments based on preference. The portions are designed to meet the bare minimum of daily nutritional requirements, and over time, the lack of variety can lead to physical deterioration. Exercise, strictly controlled and highly monitored. After breakfast, inmates are allowed a short period of exercise. However, unlike in many prisons where inmates might be taken to a large yard, given access to gym equipment, or allowed to engage in sports, exercise at Black Dolphin is another extension of their punishment. Prisoners are blindfolded, shackled, and escorted out of their cells in a bent-over position, with guards tightly gripping their arms. This ensures that they cannot memorize the layout of the prison, preventing any attempt at escape or resistance. The exercise yard is not an open space. It is simply another small, enclosed room, sometimes with a barred ceiling to allow minimal exposure to natural light. Inside this confined space, prisoners are instructed to engage in repetitive movements, marching in place, stretching, or basic calisthenics. There is no free movement, no opportunity to engage with another human being. Every action is monitored, and guards ensure that no prisoner deviates from the designated routine. This is not an opportunity for inmates to build strength or fitness. It is simply a way to keep them from physically wasting away. The exercise period is brief, often no longer than an hour, and once it is over, prisoners are returned to their cells in the same rigid, controlled manner. The long hours of isolation. For the remainder of the day, inmates exist in an unbroken cycle of isolation and surveillance. There are no work programs, no educational opportunities, and no rehabilitation efforts. The prison's philosophy is simple. These men are not here to be reformed. They are here to be contained. Prisoners are not allowed to speak unless spoken to. They cannot make requests, start conversations, or engage in any form of communication with fellow inmates. Since they are held in individual cells, they do not even have the opportunity to hear the voices of others. There are no radios, no television, and no entertainment of any kind. Books are rarely allowed, and only with specific approval. Some prisoners attempt to create mental routines to keep themselves sane, counting the bricks in their walls, doing imaginary calculations, or reciting old memories to themselves. Others simply stare at the same walls, day after day, as their sense of time and reality begins to break down. Medical care, minimal and coldly efficient. Medical attention is provided only when absolutely necessary. There is no prioritization of inmate well-being and no treatment for mental health struggles unless it becomes a serious risk to prison operations. Physical injuries or illnesses are treated with the most basic care, nothing more. There are no therapy sessions, no psychiatric evaluations, and no attempts to address the long-term psychological effects of such extreme isolation. Dinner and nightfall. The same routine, repeated forever. The evening meal is delivered in the same way as breakfast and lunch. Silent, simple, and entirely unremarkable. There is no sense of winding down for the night, no relaxation period, no personal time. The final hours before lights out are just as rigidly controlled as the rest of the day. At exactly 10 p.m., inmates are required to lie down on their metal-framed beds. However, sleep does not come easily. Guards patrol constantly, peering into cells to ensure that prisoners are following protocol. Some inmates struggle with insomnia, others with nightmares, and many simply lie awake, staring at the ceiling, trapped in the unending loop of their daily existence. There is no privacy, no escape, and no comfort. Every day is the same. Every night is the same. There is no future, no parole, and no end to the cycle. The prisoners of Black Dolphin live under a system that has completely removed their sense of identity, autonomy, and hope, and possibility of escape. A prison designed to hold forever. Black Dolphin Prison is not just one of the most secure prisons in Russia, it is one of the most escape-proof prisons on the planet. Everything about its design, security measures, and operational procedures ensures that once an inmate enters, they will never leave. This facility is built with one goal in mind: absolute containment. There has never been a recorded escape attempt from Black Dolphin, and given its extreme security protocols, the possibility of anyone ever breaking out is virtually non-existent. The layout: a fortress within a fortress. The prison itself is a fortress designed to be impenetrable from both the inside and the outside. Located in a remote area near the border with Kazakhstan, it is far from any major city, making external intervention or assistance nearly impossible. The prison complex is surrounded by multiple layers of high-security barriers, including reinforced concrete walls, barbed wire fencing, and electronic surveillance systems. Inside, Black Dolphin follows a strict compartmentalized layout, meaning that even if a prisoner somehow managed to bypass one layer of security, they would immediately be faced with another. Each section of the prison is isolated from the next, ensuring that no inmate can move freely or gain knowledge of the overall structure. The design of the facility ensures that no weak points exist. Every corridor, every door, and every checkpoint is reinforced to prevent any possibility of an escape attempt. Constant surveillance, no blind spots. Every single cell in Black Dolphin is under 24-hour video surveillance. There is not a single moment in which a prisoner is unobserved. The surveillance system is designed to eliminate blind spots, ensuring that no inmate can move undetected, hide contraband, or plan an escape. Unlike in many prisons where guards may only check on inmates periodically, at Black Dolphin, the monitoring is continuous and unrelenting. Even at night, guards make regular inspections, ensuring that prisoners are always accounted for and that no unauthorized activity is taking place. The psychological impact of constant surveillance is profound. It removes any sense of personal space or privacy, reinforcing the idea that inmates have absolutely no control over their own lives. Movement restrictions, no freedom to roam. One of the most effective ways Black Dolphin prevents escape is through its strict movement protocols. Unlike in other prisons where inmates may have scheduled yard time, access to common areas, or opportunities to move within their block, at Black Dolphin, prisoners are not allowed to walk freely, ever. When an inmate is taken out of their cell, whether for exercise, interrogation, or medical reasons, they are immediately shackled, blindfolded, and forced into a bent-over position with their hands tightly restrained behind their back. 2 or more guards escort them in this position, gripping their arms firmly to ensure they have no ability to resist or act unpredictably. This method of transportation serves multiple purposes. First, the blindfold prevents prisoners from memorizing the layout of the prison, making it impossible for them to formulate an escape plan. Second, the bent-over posture ensures that inmates remain disoriented and physically vulnerable at all times, reducing any chance of resistance. Lastly, the firm grip of the guards guarantees that no prisoner ever moves without being under complete physical control. This level of restriction means that prisoners never get an opportunity to explore their surroundings, never see an opening, and never gain the knowledge necessary to attempt an escape. Heavy-duty cell construction. No way out. The prison cells at Black Dolphin are built to be inescapable. Each cell is a small, 4-square-meter space with thick steel doors and reinforced walls that prevent any possibility of tunneling. Unlike in some older prisons where inmates have managed to dig through weak walls or dismantle parts of their cells over time, Black Dolphin's infrastructure is designed to eliminate such vulnerabilities. Doors are secured with multiple locking mechanisms, and access to cells is strictly controlled. The only openings are small slots for food delivery and ventilation, both of which are reinforced to prevent tampering. There are no exposed pipes, no loose fixtures, and no structural weaknesses that could be exploited. Even if a prisoner somehow managed to breach their cell, a feat nearly impossible in itself, they would still face multiple additional barriers, including locked gates, security checkpoints, and constant surveillance. Each section of the prison is separated by reinforced doors and corridors that require multiple layers of clearance to access, ensuring that an escaped inmate would never make it beyond their immediate block. No outside help. Isolation from the world. Another reason why an escape from Black Dolphin is impossible is the total lack of external support. In some prisons, inmates have attempted to escape with outside assistance, whether through smuggled tools, coordinated attacks, or corrupt officials. At Black Dolphin, such possibilities do not exist. The prison is completely isolated from civilian areas, and the surrounding region is heavily monitored. There are no weak points in the perimeter, no areas where someone could break in to assist and escape. Even if an inmate managed to breach the prison walls, which has never happened, they would still be trapped in a remote, heavily policed area with nowhere to hide and no means of transportation. Additionally, the guards at Black Dolphin are among the most highly trained and strictly disciplined in Russia's prison system. Corruption and bribery are virtually non-existent here. Unlike in lower security prisons where guards may be persuaded to smuggle contraband or turn a blind eye, Black Dolphin's officers operate under a zero-tolerance policy. Their sole duty is to maintain absolute order, and they execute it with military precision. Psychological barriers, breaking the will to escape. Beyond the physical security measures, Black Dolphin also employs psychological control to ensure that inmates do not even consider escape. The extreme isolation, constant surveillance, and rigid daily routine break prisoners down mentally over time. Inmates know that they're serving life sentences with no chance of parole, meaning there is no hope for release. This knowledge alone removes much of the motivation to escape. When there is no future beyond prison, there is little reason to risk a desperate, doomed attempt. The prison's harsh conditions also take a toll on physical and mental health, leaving many inmates too weak, disoriented, or psychologically defeated to even think about resistance. By removing all forms of stimulation, cutting off communication with the outside world, and ensuring that every moment is controlled, the prison effectively eliminates the mental and emotional strength required for an escape attempt. Prisoners are constantly reminded that any act of defiance will be met with swift and severe consequences. The guards show no leniency, and punishments for even minor infractions reinforce the reality that inmates have no power within these walls. Over time, this crushing environment ensures that escape is not only physically impossible, but also mentally unthinkable. The record: no successful escape in history. Since its establishment, there has never been a successful escape from Black Dolphin. The combination of extreme security measures, constant surveillance, rigid movement protocols, and psychological control ensures that no prisoner has ever made it beyond its walls. For the inmates trapped inside, Black Dolphin is not just a prison, it is a final destination. A place where time stands still, where every day is the same, and where the outside world might as well no longer exist. There is no tunnel to dig, no weak wall to break, no guard to bribe, and no hope of freedom. The psychological torment, a prison designed to break the mind. Black Dolphin Prison is not just a facility built to confine the most dangerous criminals in Russia. It is a machine designed to crush the human spirit. While physical restrictions like high walls, iron doors, and constant surveillance ensure that no one can escape, the real prison is built inside the minds of the inmates. The psychological torment experienced here is unlike anything found in most other prisons. The environment is intentionally crafted to strip away identity, hope, and even the sense of time, leaving prisoners as mere shadows of their former selves. Extreme isolation, the destruction of social connection. One of the most effective psychological weapons used at Black Dolphin is the complete removal of social interaction. Inmates are held in solitary confinement, with no cellmates, no communal activities, and no opportunities to communicate with other prisoners. Unlike in most prisons, where inmates can speak to each other through walls or during meal times, Black Dolphin enforces absolute silence. The only voices prisoners hear belong to the guards, cold, emotionless orders given with military precision. Human beings are social creatures, and isolation for long periods has been proven to cause severe psychological damage. Without any form of meaningful conversation or interaction, prisoners lose their ability to connect with others. Their voices weaken from lack of use, and eventually, many stop trying to communicate at all. They become trapped inside their own minds, with only their thoughts to keep them company. Thoughts that, over time, become darker and more hopeless. Constant surveillance, the feeling of never being alone. While prisoners are physically isolated, they are never truly alone. Every movement they make is monitored by security cameras, and guards conduct frequent inspections to ensure that no rules are broken. There is no privacy, not even in sleep. The knowledge that someone is always watching, always analyzing, creates a deep sense of paranoia. In many high-security prisons, inmates find ways to carve out small moments of personal space, perhaps by covering a security camera or using hand signals to communicate in secret. At Black Dolphin, this is impossible. The guards are trained to recognize even the smallest deviations from routine, and any suspicious behavior is met with immediate consequences. The prisoners understand this, and over time, the constant surveillance breaks them down. They stop trying to resist, stop trying to assert any form of independence, and eventually accept their complete lack of control. Monotony and the loss of time. One of the most effective ways Black Dolphin destroys a prisoner's mental state is by erasing their sense of time. The days follow an unbreakable, repetitive cycle. Wake up, inspection, silent meals, exercise in a cage, more isolation, and then sleep. There are no clocks inside the cells, no newspapers, no television, and no radio. Prisoners are cut off from the outside world entirely. They do not know if it is winter or summer, if years have passed, or if anything significant has happened beyond the walls of their prison. Inmates have no means of marking the passage of time except through their own memories, but even those begin to fade as the days blend together. Some prisoners try to count the seconds, the days, or the weeks, but without any external confirmation. Their estimates quickly become unreliable. The psychological effect of this is devastating. When time becomes meaningless, so does existence. There is nothing to look forward to, nothing to wait for, only the endless repetition of an existence that will never change. Lack of mental stimulation, a slow descent into madness. In many prisons, inmates have access to books, educational programs, or even work assignments that give them something to focus on. But at Black Dolphin, there is none of that. There are no opportunities for personal growth, no way to develop new skills, and no possibility of rehabilitation. Prisoners are given nothing to occupy their minds except the walls of their tiny cells. Without mental stimulation, the brain begins to deteriorate. Inmates lose their ability to concentrate, their memories fade, and they struggle to form coherent thoughts. Over time, many prisoners experience hallucinations, paranoia, and deep depression. The lack of intellectual engagement makes even the most basic thoughts feel heavy, and, eventually, some prisoners stop thinking altogether. They sit in their cells, staring at the walls, existing but not truly living. The weight of a life sentence. The despair of knowing there is no escape. Perhaps the most crushing psychological burden is the knowledge that there is no way out. Unlike in some prisons where inmates might have a chance at parole, reduced sentences, or rehabilitation programs, at Black Dolphin, there is no such hope. Every prisoner here is serving a life sentence. They will never leave. They will never walk free. They will never see their families again. This reality sinks in over time, breaking even the strongest minds. In the early days, some prisoners may hold onto the hope of an appeal, a transfer, or some unexpected twist of fate that might change their situation. But as months turn into years, and the routine never changes, the truth becomes undeniable. There is no future beyond these walls. This knowledge leads many inmates to experience deep despair. Depression sets in, and for some, thoughts of suicide become the only escape. The prison does not encourage or allow suicide, but for prisoners who have nothing left to live for, death can seem like the only way to regain control over their fate. The realization that they will die within these walls, forgotten by the world, is a burden that never goes away. Punishment for the smallest infractions. At Black Dolphin, discipline is absolute. Even the smallest deviation from the rules is met with swift and severe punishment. There is no tolerance for disobedience, no room for negotiation. If a prisoner does not stand at attention fast enough, does not move exactly as ordered, or fails to show proper submission, they are immediately reprimanded. Punishments can include extended isolation, reduced food rations, or even physical restraint. There is no appeal process, no explanation given, just immediate consequences. This reinforces the idea that prisoners have no rights, no power, and no control over their own fate. They exist solely at the mercy of the prison system, and any attempt to assert independence is crushed before it can take root, breaking the human spirit. Everything about Black Dolphin is designed to ensure that prisoners are not just locked away, but completely broken. The combination of extreme isolation, constant surveillance, mind-numbing routine, and psychological manipulation ensures that inmates lose all sense of self. They are no longer individuals with thoughts, emotions, or personal identities. They become empty shells, existing only within the framework of the prison's rules. Even the most hardened criminals, those who once thought themselves invincible, are reduced to nothing inside these walls. The prison does not physically torture its inmates, but the mental and emotional torment is just as effective, if not more so. The absence of human connection, the erasure of time, and the certainty of a future without change combine to create a psychological prison far worse than any physical restraint. The fate of the prisoners, a life without hope, a death without recognition. For the inmates of Black Dolphin Prison, the most secure and isolated jail on earth, there is only one certainty. They will die within its walls. There is no release, no second chance, and no possibility of redemption. From the moment they enter this fortress of isolation and control, they cease to be members of society. They are no longer considered people with futures, families, or potential. They're simply inmates, numbers in a system designed to ensure they never walk free again. Their crimes are among the most severe: mass murderers, terrorists, serial killers, and some of the worst offenders in Russian history. Society has deemed them unworthy of reintegration, and as a result, Black Dolphin serves as their final destination. The prison is not simply a place of punishment. It is a waiting room for death, where prisoners spend every waking moment under complete control, awaiting the inevitable end of their existence. A life without purpose. Most prisons, even those with life sentences, offer some semblance of structure. Work programs, rehabilitation efforts, or at the very least, small opportunities for inmates to engage with the world in a limited capacity. But at Black Dolphin, prisoners are stripped of any purpose beyond mere survival. There is no work to do. There are no jobs inside the prison, no kitchen duty, no laundry service, no maintenance work. Everything is handled by prison staff, and inmates are not allowed to contribute in any way. This complete lack of responsibility removes any sense of usefulness. In most places, prisoners can at least develop skills, educate themselves, or occupy their time with tasks. At Black Dolphin, there is no such opportunity. Even basic freedoms, like reading books or writing letters, are highly restricted. Any access to reading material is subject to approval, and personal writing is discouraged. The prison is not interested in allowing inmates to reflect, learn, or grow. It exists purely to confine. The result is a life of unbearable monotony, where days blend into weeks, weeks into years, and years into a void that feels endless. No connection to the outside world. Once inside Black Dolphin, inmates lose all connection to the outside world. Communication with family members is rare and highly controlled. Letters are censored, phone calls are virtually non-existent, and visits are extremely limited. The isolation ensures that prisoners gradually fade from the memories of those who once knew them. Unlike in some prisons where families might visit regularly, offering glimpses of life beyond the bars at Black Dolphin, such human connections are systematically severed. The state has no interest in maintaining ties between inmates and their former lives. In many cases, prisoners' families stop writing, stop visiting, and eventually stop acknowledging their existence. Some prisoners even have their names removed from public records, making it seem as if they never existed at all. Without family support, without friendships, and without any form of external interaction, prisoners become ghosts, forgotten by the world outside and consumed by the void inside the prison walls. Aging in captivity. For those who enter Black Dolphin at a young age, the years ahead are a slow, relentless march toward physical and mental deterioration. The harsh conditions, lack of sunlight, and minimal physical activity take a toll on the body. Many prisoners develop chronic health problems, muscle atrophy from lack of movement, weakened immune systems due to poor nutrition, and severe mental health issues caused by prolonged isolation. As prisoners grow older, they receive only the most basic medical attention. There is no concern for long-term care, no focus on quality of life. The prison does not exist to help its inmates grow old with dignity. It exists to contain them until their bodies inevitably fail. Some prisoners lose their teeth due to malnutrition. Others develop permanent back problems from years of being transported in the bent-over position, their spines never fully recovering from the unnatural posture. Eyesight weakens due to poor lighting, and mental faculties decline due to the complete lack of stimulation. By the time prisoners reach old age, they are often barely recognizable as the people they once were. Their former identities, whatever they may have been, have long since faded. What remains are hollowed-out shells of men, broken by years of isolation, silence, and submission. Death without ceremony. At Black Dolphin, there is no heroic escape, no dramatic prison riot, and no hope for freedom. The only way out is death. Some prisoners succumb to illness, their bodies weakened by years of poor conditions. Others deteriorate mentally, slipping into madness before their physical bodies give out. And for some, the crushing weight of existence becomes too much to bear, leading them to take their own lives. There are no grand announcements when an inmate dies. There is no funeral, no mourning, no recognition from the world outside. Their bodies are quietly removed, often buried in unmarked graves, their names erased from history. For those still alive, the death of a fellow inmate is not an event of sorrow. It is simply another reminder that their own time will come, and when it does, no one will remember them either at a life forgotten, a prison that never fails. Black Dolphin Prison is not just a place of confinement. It is a place where time, identity, and hope are erased. It is a facility built with one purpose: to ensure that the worst criminals in Russia never again pose a threat to society. The unrelenting security, the extreme isolation, and the crushing psychological torment all serve one undeniable truth. Once an inmate enters, they are no longer a part of the world. There are no second chances here, no redemption stories, no hope of escape. The prisoners are condemned not just to a life behind bars, but to a slow, grinding existence that will eventually end in silence. For them, the world outside might as well no longer exist, and for the world outside, they have already been forgotten. Black Dolphin stands as a grim reminder of what ultimate justice looks like. An unbreakable prison where the sentence is not just life, but an existence stripped of meaning. It is the end of the road, a place where punishment is absolute, and freedom is nothing more than a distant memory.